So, okay, now I think time for more questions. It's important about karma and the way samsara works and what we talked about. Any other questions? If not, I'll keep going.
Raise your hand. Is that Linda? That you raised that? Please unmute yourself.
Good. Okay, Linda. Talk to me, sweetheart. Yeah. There you go.
All right. Can you hear me?
I can, yes. Darling. I can, yes.
Okay, now I can't hear you. I think I need... I'm very hard of hearing.
Oh, dear.
And also, my volume doesn't seem to be...
Oh.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
I can,
good,
yes. Thank you.
Good. Okay, go, Linda.
Okay, my question is this. And I was reluctant to ask this question. Actually, I'm kind of nervous about it because it's very personal.
Yes.
It concerns a lifelong struggle with depression,
yes,
anxiety,
yes,
obsessive compulsive disorder. 45 years. It's been coming and going, mostly coming.
Yeah.
And now I was reading some of your notes this morning, and you do mention depression quite a bit. And thank you for those notes, by the way. They're incredible.
Good.
And so most of my life, I've been thinking of depression as, the blame it on my genetics and my parents, and you're presenting a completely different view that I carry it forward karmically. But maybe my question is more this, and that is that depression, it's just such a horrendous affliction. I call it the beast. And of course, all the symptoms. There's great agitation, inability to focus, incredible mind chatter. I call it monkey mind on steroids. And as well as it's this incredible self-centeredness. It just sort of comes with the territory. So I'm wondering a couple of things. I get discouraged sometimes because I feel like, will it ever be possible for me to develop a strong Buddhist practice, to be able to develop bodhicitta, to become an aspiring bodhisattva, to meditate effectively? Is it possible? I've struggled so to overcome these limitations, and so far haven't really succeeded. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this, Venerable.
I hear you, Linda. I hear you, sweetheart. I'm really listening carefully to what you're saying, and this is not diminishing in any way your own particular personal experiences. But the thing is, all I can say is the more, I'm buying into the Buddhist view. I'm trying to practice it. I have to speak it, so that helps me practice it more. The more I understand the way Buddha describes the mind, the more I see that we're all variations of the same theme. Now, you might or might not think that, but I think it's true. But I think part of the problem is the assumptions in the way you're even asking the question. And we're all exactly like that. If it's not what you're saying, then someone else talks about having anger all the time. If it's not anger, it's going to be jealousy. If it's not jealousy, it's going to be tiredness. If it's not that, it's going to be low self-esteem. There's always going to be one or other of these afflictions, as Buddha calls them, these delusions, these neurotic states of mind, these unhappy tendencies that to one degree or another we all have. Like I was saying before, it's all attachment. We give these different labels in the West. So a person who's very needy, we mightn't call that attachment. A person who's addicted, we mightn't call that attachment, but they're just functions of attachment. We've all got attachment. It manifests in a multitude of ways. We've all got aversion, which is the response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. And so so that means we have to understand what attachment is and what aversion is. For the Buddha, this is the model that refers to every single sentient being. So then the way it's expressing, each of us, it expresses in a certain way. Some people have attachment to food. Some people have attachment to cleaning their house all day. one might say that eating food is a problem, and another person might say, well, cleaning your house is a nice thing to do. But they're all driven by this constant emotional hunger. We've all got this. Everyone's got it. So emotional hunger is the most primordial one. We come into this life with this sense, no, even more fundamental, this sense of dissatisfaction. So when we say depression or even anger, they're both symptoms of the same problem, which is the depth of this feeling that I'm not enough, I don't have enough. And this is since we're born, Linda. So then depending on your personality, all of us have got attachment and all of us have got aversion. These are the two fundamental ones. Then all the others, low self-esteem and jealousy, all depending on who we are, they're all branches of those, So if we look at the fundamental thing of attachment, it's this sense first, I haven't got enough, dissatisfaction. And that could manifest as dissatisfied with the outside world, not enough food, not enough money, not enough security. Then it could manifest more primordial as I am not enough. And depression is very much a part of that. And as you very well said, it's self-centered because all of this stuff is self-centered. Not to feel guilty about it, it's the character of these states of mind. So attachment is a sense of not enough. The stronger that is, the more our suffering, the more limited, the more fearful, the more rigid our view that this is who I am. So the deep feeling of attachment is I always must find something else. It's never satisfied with what we've got. We believe that I'm not enough. We believe we don't have enough. So we're always looking for something else to fill it up. Maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll have this. Maybe I'll have that. But it's this bottomless pit. It can't be satisfied because it's a deep view. Then the attachment, the other level of attachment for all of us day to day, because we've got senses. From the time we wake up, we can see that we're anticipating something. Now I'll have breakfast. Now I'll do this. Now I'll go there. Now I'll go to work. And now I'll have this. And now I'll do shopping. And then depending on depending on whether it's successful or not, maybe your leg hurts. So then you're always frustrated. You can't go shopping because your leg hurts. You can't do your dishes because your leg hurts. And then the mind gets more and more distressed. So there's a multitude of ways of talking about it, but essentially it's attachment, which is not satisfied with what we've got, always wants something more, always searching for that something, and then the aversion that's arising almost second by second, which is the response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. Now that aversion, depending on who the personality is, it can be the most volatile level of screaming and shouting and yelling. Now we know plenty of people like that. They are expressing thwarted attachment, but they shout and yell and scream and punch and kill. Look at the world. Look at the world. Could be your hubby who just gets angry all the time and chucks things. That's an expression of thwarted attachment. Then you've got the milder levels of thwarted attachment, which we don't even notice. And that's called getting annoyed, upset, irritated, frustrated. And that's anxiety. That's like things aren't quite right enough. This is millisecond by millisecond, Linda. Then the more internalized levels of aversion, which build up, finally you can't get out of bed one morning. You are inert and you're just frozen with depression and despair. Your mind has just collapsed. So all of this is what's happening in all of us. So then you say, so the assumption in your words is that when this stops, then I'll be able to practice. Don't you? You assume you talked like that, didn't you? Now let's just say the way I just described before is you've got no ability to play tennis. You're hopeless at tennis. You wouldn't even know how to play tennis. That's exactly what I'm talking about before. So what you keep saying is, well, when I'm able to play tennis, then I'll be able to learn to play tennis. It's kind of catch-22. Honey, playing tennis means you've got to start realizing you're hopeless at the moment. You can't play tennis, but guess what? You practice playing tennis. But the assumption we have is when I get better, then I can play tennis. But the very definition of playing tennis means you're counteracting the not playing tennis. So Buddhist practice by definition, Linda, is taking who you are and what you are, doing your practice every day, and then rejoicing in the tiny bit of tennis you played. Maybe you hit one ball in 5 hours instead of, I'm still hopeless, I'm still no good, I still can't do it. If only I could play tennis. So we're always identifying with what we can't do instead of identifying with the fact that you're practicing. You are, from your words, you are practicing, Linda. It's like you're sowing seeds every day, but you look outside in your garden, and because you can't see the seeds growing as fruits yet, you think you've done no work. So you just think I've done nothing. But that's not true, Linda. You are practicing so hard. You are practicing every day. So we have to have the patience and humility to know that you are sowing good seeds and they will come eventually. It's like you've just gone to the gym and you come home and you're disappointed because you haven't lost all that weight yet. It's just a false expectation. So the assumption in your words is already mistaken. You're already thinking you're not any better yet. Because you keep identifying with your rubbish and not identifying with the practice you're doing. That's what we have to learn to do. Are we sort of communicating or not? You're actually doing really well, Linda, but we never think so. Are you hearing me or not? So in other words, we judge our success by whether we feel good. But we have to practice. This sounds so hilarious. We have to practice feeling good. And I'm not joking, but that means by thinking, I did a good job. I'm doing my best. I did a bit of practice today. This is fantastic. Positive thoughts are what make us happy. Negative thoughts are what make us miserable. So we keep reinforcing the negative thoughts, reinforcing what you haven't achieved, reinforcing your crazy mind. Join the universe, baby. We're all don't know how to play tennis. It's a disaster. But we've got some methods. You've got a map. You've got a system. You're doing it every day. Rejoice in your practice. Then eventually and then slowly you'll train your mind to start by rejoicing. That'll lift you. This is practice, Linda.
Yes. It's such a habitual thing.
That's
this
right,
depression.
Darling. No, okay, so wait, no, I'm not even going to use those words. When you say this depression, you're giving a certain label to a certain state of mind. I don't know about that word. You just described it. So tell me what you mean, this depression. What is this depression that you're referring to? Tell me some of the symptoms. Tell me some of the ways you think. I don't want to know about other people's label of it. Tell me your own experiences. How do you define depression? I'm just curious.
Oh, gosh.
It's a really important point. What do you think it is? What is going on in your mind, in other words? What are the thoughts in your mind that you feel this is called depression?
Well, so in other words, the manifestations of depression, the aspects of it you're
like
asking
what?
me?
Give me an example.
Yeah. I mean, most of all, I think it's just an unbelievable feeling of deep, deep sadness.
Okay.
And hopelessness.
Yes, I hear it.
Hopelessness.
Okay, before you go further, good. So the sadness, so the hopelessness, I understand that. So then how, if you know anything about Buddhist psychology, and you seem to be a Buddhist practitioner, how would you describe, how would you define why there's a feeling of hopelessness? How would you put it into words? Tell me the words that hopelessness says.
Well, that's a tough one.
Because
it's kind of,
it's a feeling,
it just feels like an existential kind of
it's a feeling, and that's right, exactly. So it's a deep feeling, isn't it? In the bones of your being. It's just there, like a grey cloud on your head, right?
Yes.
Right. So then, if everything is habit, let's try to just analyze what it is. Because if we can analyze what it is, we can find a solution. So, I mean, it's just a deep habit of... This is the thing, when we understand the Buddhist psychological model, because you see, this is my way of saying it now, because we are so addicted to our bodies and our own view in the world, neuroscience and psychology is related to the body, the brain, the physical. This is really for the Buddha, this is the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg. So the problem is, since you're born, Linda, like all of us, your mind came into this life with bunches of thoughts. Even when they're not articulate as a baby, the residual result of those thoughts is there. So the residual results of your own practice of past attachment, the residual results of your own practice of lack of satisfaction, the residual results of your own aversion. So as a little girl even, these are already programmed in your mind. So I would suggest that you're not a violent person, are you? You don't get shout and scream, do you? That's right, and that's the way it manifests in you. So I was born with attachment as well and aversion, but my aversion was more volatile. As the moment I didn't get what I wanted, I would shout and yell, and it's evident. But when you didn't get what you wanted 1,000 times a day, when you didn't get the milk on time, when you didn't get the food on time, and mummy didn't look at you the right way, automatically aversion arose in your mind, but yours is more subtle. Yours, what you didn't scream and kick. I screamed and kicked because it's more evident, but yours just stuck in your mind. So over years and years of this practice of being disappointed when you didn't get what you wanted, it's now this concrete sense of nothingness, hopelessness, nothing works. It's a build-up of aversion. It's a build-up of thwarted attachment and aversion, but yours is more subtle because it's not volatile. Therefore, yours is much harder to see. Are we kind of communicating? This is the analysis. This is the Buddhist analysis. But we see it as a concrete thing that's like a special lump inside you that's like a piece that you should cut it out. But it's just a habit of your mind of attachment always wanting something more, attachment never being satisfied. And even as tiny babies, we're going to get thwarted. You know, a pain in your knee, an aversion would arise. Your mummy didn't give you the milk on time, aversion arises. You know, but yours is more subtle aversion. And that becomes frustration and then eventually becomes this solid sense of hopelessness. It's just a build-up. So a person who keeps getting angry, that builds up until they kill somebody, or they kill themselves, or they go crazy. They're all, so attachment and aversion, this seems so simplistic for us in the modern world. These are the primordial things we run between like 1,000 times a day. Attachment is this hope, this expectation, this neediness, this emotional hunger, this always wanting something more, and we might get it temporarily, you get the cake, you get the milk, you get the love, mummy strokes you, and it's satisfied for a moment, but then dissatisfaction kicks back in, and then frustration arises, and then you get something else and dissatisfaction. So it's a build-up of dissatisfaction, getting something for a moment, getting some pleasure, and it goes away. And then a build-up, it's a build-up, it's a build-up, 1,000 times, 2,000 times a day. Everyone is like this. This is the model of it. So this is where practice comes in. We start to do our little practice every morning. You start to put purification in your mind. You start purifying your mind at a deeper level. This is the function of all the purification. It's removing the weeds at a very deep level so that it begins to get some space in the mind so little flowers can grow. But we've got to be patient and have confidence in the practice that you know you won't see results overnight. But the other trick is, as long as we keep identifying with the hopelessness, this is me, rather than I'm practicing, I'm moving towards out of hopelessness. I'm moving away from not playing tennis. If every single day you think I'm hopeless at tennis, you might have been playing for 10 years and you're hopeless at tennis. I'm hopeless at tennis. You're never noticing all the practice you're doing. You keep going, reverting back, I'm hopeless at tennis. Then that'll how it'll appear to you. So we've got to start, it's almost like faking it till we make it, because it all comes down to being thoughts and the depth of our being. So slowly to reinterpret who you are every day, slowly to rejoice in the various qualities you've got, the good qualities you've got, because when you're feeling hopeless, you don't see a single damn thing that's good about yourself or your situation. This is what I said before. You take for granted all the things you've got. But instead of rejoicing in them, this is how you loosen this block of hopelessness. Slowly, 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 Linda. But it's conscious practice. It's conscious cognitive. It's like Buddha's a cognitive therapist. You're reprogramming your interpretation of yourself and your condition. This is everybody's practice in one way or another. Plus the practices you do that bring in the Buddha, that bring in the practice of bodhicitta. Every time you do this, you are putting atomic bombs at a deep level under all the nonsense. And you're slowly making space for your mind. So we've got to reinterpret ourselves. Reinterpret every day and say positive thoughts. There's no choice but to do that, Linda. This is part of what practice is. It almost seems too simple because we don't believe the positive thoughts. You're still going to keep going back to the default hope of being hopeless. It is true. It is a feeling there. You are right. And that's because of the habit of it. But we've got to start to sort of live with that habit, live with that feeling of hopelessness, but add new things into it. Put a new kind of rewrite your script. This is very much what day-to-day practice is. And trying to not keep expecting the horrible feelings to go away. Almost like you've got to learn to live with the horrible feelings. Instead of being hopeless, it could be a pain in your knee. And if you're always obsessing about the pain in your knee, the pain in the knee looms large and dominates everything, doesn't it? The same with your hopelessness. Because these are true things. It's not as if you're making it up. You're not making it up, darling. But we have to, right now, consciously reinterpret things in a positive way. And slowly, slowly, light begins to come in, But we're still going to have to live with our hopelessness, live with our anger and jealousy. But the more we see them and confront them and don't resist them, that weakens them, that loosens them. So it's this gradual process, Linda, gradual process. But darling, you've got to delight in your good qualities. You've got to delight in your effort. You've got to delight in your patience and kindness. But we never do that. This is a terrible irony of ego. You're right about your hopelessness. It is there, but it's like learning to live with it, learning to live with all the crazy, angry thoughts, learning to live with your berserk thoughts. Don't be afraid of them. Stop thinking they've got to change. This is really tough work, but this is practice, Linda.
So bodhisattvahood is still an option?
It's not even an option. It's no choice. It's your nature. You've got to aim for it.
Yeah.
We've got to aim for it. Every single day you do a bit of practice, you're putting a few more seeds in the ground, and then you nourish them with your effort every day, and they will grow. This is logic. It's logic, not kind of cross your fingers and hope for the best. One step at a time, sweetheart.
Thank you so much.
We've got to go slowly, slowly, Linda, and remember this. And that's why it's so important just to read books like I don't know if you've read Lama Yeshe, but Lama Yeshe's book on Mahamudra, he's so uplifting. He talks about the true nature of our mind, and it's so marvelous to know that that's our potential. It's sort of like if you only ever play crummy tennis with a crummy tennis player, but you never see Federer. But if one day you see Federer, you go, wow, it is possible. You've got to lift yourself by reading sometimes biographies or reading some of the lamas and the yogis, how they talk about what our potential is, and know that that is your potential, sweetheart. When you read about the bodhisattvas, you know that's your potential. It's natural, it's logical. It gives you courage. What do you think?
Thank you.
Slowly, slowly, darling. I promise. Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you, Linda. And we're all variations of the same theme, Linda, I promise you. We've all got our own story, you know. And this is the irony of ego, that somehow the negative stuff looms larger than the good. And that's something quite powerful, you know. The stuff's real. Our delusions are real. Your hopelessness is real. The crazy mind is real. But we over-exaggerate its realness and we set it in stone. That's another way of putting it. It is real, but it's impermanent, Linda. Do you understand, darling? We have to have the courage to live with it. And then we actively, positively, also you've got to start bringing out your good roommates. I talk like that. Bring out your kindness, your love, your rejoicing. Recognize your effort. Delight in your effort. You've got to do it, Linda. We like other people saying it, but we sort of don't believe it. But we have to do it ourselves. That's what brings light into it. I promise you. Okay? Good, Linda. Thank you so much, sweetheart. Anybody else? Any other points? It's so important, these points.
Yeah, Stephen.
Who?
Yeah. Hi.
Hello, sweetheart.
You maybe touched. Hello, how you doing?
Hello, Stephen. Good, darling.
You maybe touched on a bit there when you mentioned like the knee pain, focusing on knee pain, but
The what, sweetheart? Say it again.
so you maybe focused on it in that last answer there. You maybe mentioned my question, my answer there, but I just want, because I work quite a physical job, so it's maybe similar to the last question, but I work quite a physical job, and it's I suffer a lot of like chronic pain. Like every day, my body's quite stiff and sore. I try to do like stretching and yogas and rest as well, but you know, like every day it's like physical pain. So is that the same application as well? Just
yes, it's a really good
practices?
point, Stephen. It really is the same, or even whatever the situation is. Like if, for example, I talk about my friend in prison, Sunny, this woman on death row, was an example I use as an extreme example of suffering. That either the suffering, like Linda talks, it's the mind. You talk about it's the body. Well, my friend Sunny on death row for 15 years, accused of murder, didn't murder anybody. She was on death row. Her husband even got executed. His head burst into flames when she went to the execution. She lost her children. You can't describe one nightmare after another. It's exactly the same, whether it's that scenario, whether it's your pain, or whether it's your mind. It's the same approach. It's the same approach, as tough as it is. So first of all, be reasonable. Do everything we can to help your body. She did everything she could, and she finally succeeded in getting out of bloody prison after 17 years of hell. But even in prison, she was able. She was so moving and so powerful for me. I always quote her. She was, totally innocent. This little hippie hitching in the 70s in Florida with a husband and kids, little hippies, got picked up by two guys. The police stopped the guys. The guys killed the police and blamed the hippies, so they're on death row. Like you can't even imagine the nightmare, But I know so many people in the American prison system is pretty corrupt, it seems to me. It's pretty intense. Even the numbers are kind of outrageous. They have 5% of the world population, but they've got a quarter or 25% of all humans on the planet who live in prison, live in American prisons. It's unbelievable, the intensity of it. It seems corrupt, it seems heavy, angry, like so much false sentencing. So these people on death row, 17 years, he gets executed. But she's in a cell on her own for years and years with a Bible. But she's got this extraordinary ability. This is the point to all of us. It's a variation of the same theme. The nightmare was unbelievable, overwhelming, and enough to make many people go completely out of their brains. I know so many people, the despair of being in prison wrongly accused, you literally go mad. And this is the same thing, whether it's pain or your mind. So she had this ability, and she just used her own method. She did yoga. She said, I knew I had a choice. I knew I could. And that what she meant was, she said, I realized at some point I couldn't change anything. But they couldn't take my mind from me. So she said, I knew I had a choice. She'd be in her cell 23 hours a day, going completely out of her brain. You can imagine this nightmare when she's completely innocent, husband dead, children lost. The nightmare of it, no one to refer to, no one to help her, no one to support her. But she had this extraordinary ability. She said, I knew I had a choice. So she learned to work on her mind. She learned to interpret this experience differently. In other words, she kept herself sane. And what I'm saying to Linda is that she learned to interpret it in a more optimistic way. She learned to get the advantages from it. She learned to see the good qualities she had and the advantages. Because when we see only the negative, whether it's Linda's scenario, your scenario, or hers, when we see only the negative, we don't see any positive. That's why we go mad. So when we have the negative, and that's because we've got attachment, and attachment is this junkie in us that can only bear the nice things. Attachment only wants to have a happy body. Attachment only wants to have freedom and sort of it seems normal, it's natural. And attachment only wants to have happy mind. So when we don't have it, then we go crazy. And people can go completely mad, and that means we're blinded from seeing anything good. She said she knew she could change the way she interpreted. So she did her yoga. She said, I decided I'm not a prisoner, I'm a monk. I'm not in a cell, I'm in a cave. She practiced spiritual paths. She read things. She did yoga. She became sane and content and fulfilled. She didn't lose her mind. She didn't go crazy, and she even never stopped working on her freedom, and she eventually got her freedom. So it's a scenario, it's the same, because we can see life is fraught. There's always going to be something that comes. And when we understand what attachment is, this junkie in us that is like an infant that can only cope with nice feelings. We only want nice feelings. So the extent of our desperate craving for nice feelings is the extent of the despair and the anger and the fears and the anxiety when nice feelings don't come. Are we communicating? All of us, are we communicating here? This is so primordial, This attachment and aversion sounds so cute and simple, but the more we have this emotional hunger, a neurotic emotional hunger, that is like a junkie that only wants nice things. The moment the mind gets unhappy, we get unnice things, we freak out. The moment the body hurts, we freak out. The moment you see this cell and you feel of your innocence and then people are accusing you, you literally go mad. People go mad. This is the essence of what practice is. So the Buddha always says, if you can change something, please change it. But what if you can't? So this is why, so it doesn't mean you sit there like a martyr and put up with your pain. If you can take drugs and can find methods to stop your pain, nothing wrong. But meanwhile, use it as a practice and try and, it sounds so corny. So for Linda, the same. Remember her good qualities. If Linda's sitting here and she's a maniac and she's a terrorist and she's a murderer and a rapist and have to lock her in a chair, then there's nothing much she can do. But she's got so many good qualities. She's got kindness and patience and virtue. But because her mind is neurotic, she doesn't see any of her own good. She probably doesn't even remind herself of her good. You probably have got lots of other good qualities besides the pain. This is, we're going to be humble with this. It's not that easy, but we are capable. As she said, I couldn't change anything, but they couldn't take my mind from me. This is really profound. She's not a Buddhist. I know her now. She's out of prison. She's amazing. And she lives in Ireland. She's like nearly 80, I think, and her husband is old as well. And he was accused of killing 2 British policemen during the war, during the Troubles in Ireland. And they're both now living in this little place in Cork or somewhere, both old, taking care of ex-prisoners. They're doing such a wonderful job. Such good human beings, Are we communicating, people? This is what practice is. It's easy when everything goes nice. We think, I'm a good Buddhist practitioner. I feel good. I do my practice. It's only when problems come that we start to have to really practice, This is the tough part. It's just tough. It's not easy, but it's possible. This is the point. What do you think, Stephen?
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
What, darling? What?
Yeah, I'm just in the. That does make sense. It's just getting over that attachment.
Yeah, of course it is, sweetheart. Of course, Stephen. This is. Do not underestimate the depth of the difficulty of this practice. But to know it. But if we locate, you see, we don't talk about this in modern psychology. We don't question the assumption that we only want the nice things. We don't question that. But this is Buddha. He goes more deep. So we look at this assumption that somehow it's frantic to only get nice things, and it's the extent to which we're frantic to get nice things second by second is the extent to which we freak out when we don't. But again, remember also, we've got to look into the past, why we even come into this life with these habits and why bad things happen to us. Of course, that's the karmic view, and that's up to each one of us whether we like that view, but it just explains why, say for Linda, this kind of cloud in her life, So it's but all this is quite subtle. But we can learn to chip away, and have positive thoughts and rewrite the scripts. All this is just words. Cognitive therapy is a really good phrase, It's very powerful. But slowly, Stephen. It's slowly. And that's why it helps us to have some kind of stable practice morning and night. It gives us some courage. then we do things. And remember, the other view about karma is that the things, the seeds we plant now, they might take a long time to ripen. But we get that when it comes to a garden. I mean, if Linda's growing a garden and she gets all excited because she's sowing seeds for fruits and herbs and flowers, and she looks out next day, she'll be devastated because there's no garden there. So the problem isn't that there's no garden yet, it's her false expectation. That's the point. There's always this false expectation that happiness should come soon. And then we freak out again, you know. So there's a lot of stuff to look at a deeper level, and just do our best and try to rejoice in our good qualities and practice one step at a time and get whatever support we can. So get hugs when we can. Get your friend next to you to hug you every now and again, Stephen. Give you a little massage. There you go, you see. That lifts us up. Have someone love us and be kind. You got people who love you, Linda? No? Nobody loves you, Linda? Does anybody love you, Linda? I can't hear you. Unmute. Unmute. You have got. Good. Use it. Use it as nourishment. Use it as nourishment. Good then. Use that as nourishment, Linda. Use it as nourishment to lift you. It's so important. But look, we have to learn to live with the pain. We have to learn to live with the crazy thoughts, Linda. And when we don't resist them, they don't have nearly so much power. There's much less fear. If you've got some maniacs living next door and you live in fear of them every day, your suffering will be unbearable. So your roommates are in your head, honey. Learn to live with them. Don't push them away. Don't wish they weren't there. Hear what they're saying and tell them to shut up, but learn to live with them, Linda. The moment you learn to live with them, you're not having fear. You're not resisting them, and then the pain is less.
Well, I must say, I do have a lot of joy in my life. I don't need to imply that I'm at the bottom of the abyss all the time.
I understand. Yes, darling, that's good.
And I do have plenty of people who love me.
Amazing.
And so, you know, I cherish these things.
That's it.
Yeah.
So I think a key one is it's the result of past stuff. It is there. But part of the process is learning to live with it, not resist it. This sounds so simple, but it's really profound. The more you resist those neighbours next door, the more you wish they weren't there, the more you have fear of what they're doing and participate, then the more suffering you have. But if you learn to listen to them and kind of unpack it and go into it, then it dissipates. It becomes much less. So the things you have are real. That feeling is real. Don't discount that. But the more you look into it and learn to live with it, it kind of dissipates. It'll start to become less. It'll start to dominate you. This is what the practice, even with pain, Stephen. But I mean, you can't find any method to stop the pain. I mean, usually painkillers don't work, or even, I mean, have you got some other chronic disease or something? Have you looked into it?
Yeah, I've been diagnosed with fibromyalgia.
Oh, then no wonder you've got pain then.
Yes, and it comes and goes, and some things help. Sometimes if I do some qigong practice or some yoga, kind of helps a bit.
What about nutrition? I mean, food that you put into your mouth is kind of fundamental. Have you got good nutritionists? Huh?
Say that again, sorry?
Have you got good nutritionists? Nutrition, the food that you put into your body is what makes your body. Maybe you've got to go back to basics.
Yeah. I mean, I eat sort of plant-based, so I try to look after that as well.
You need
healthy.
to. I mean, this is what the body is. The body is just the food you put in your mouth, mate.
Mm-hmm.
So look at all things you can do and then do your best. And if pain is still there, then you try your best to practice. I mean, I think of people who've got pain. Some people live in the most intense pain. I can imagine killing yourself. It must be so unbearable, I can imagine that. And that's when we allow it to loom large, Linda. Whether it's pain, mental or physical. This is the worst suffering in our life. This is the most tragic suffering, the number of us who kill ourselves. Because this is the point, using the Buddhist analysis. It's there, it's true. The pain is there, the cloud is there. But then it dominates the whole picture. We can see nothing else, and we can see no light at the end of the tunnel. This is where we just despair, And that's why this woman on death row was so amazing. Sunny, she's an incredible example. I knew I had the choice to think differently, she said. And this is extraordinary. So courageous. Thank you, people. It's so important. We're all variations of the same thing, Keep moving, everybody. There is a map. There is a way out. We just have to have patience. That's all. That's why if you read Lama Yeshe's book in Mahamudra, and even look at the consequences of getting single point of concentration, which we can all get, it takes a while. You can't describe the lightness of mind, the joy, the utter control over every thought. We are capable. So at least you see, what I'm getting at, Linda, is your mind's a mess, let's say now, join the universe, but there's potential for it not to be. So even, for me, it's like having a map. If you don't have a map, and we don't tend to have maps in our modern cultures, that's why we despair, I think. So then if there's no map, you could be 1 mile from your destination, but you'll get lost. You'll be completely lost. You'll never find it. But if you've got a map and maybe there's a 10,000 mile destination, if you've got a map, you can relax and go one step at a time with confidence. You see what I'm saying, Linda? The mind has this incredible potential, sweetheart. We don't talk like this in modern psychology. Buddha's view is outrageous, and don't just think of it as religion. You have, yes, the potential for the mind to have infinite compassion, infinite wisdom is exactly the potential in your mind at this second. You can play tennis. The methods are there. So that's what should give us courage. This is so important. We need to lift ourselves up to know it's possible. What else, sweethearts? 11:30. So I think maybe we've talked about karma a little bit. We've talked about karma a little bit, which is the first stages of getting out of samsara. We talked about purification, but I didn't describe the process. So maybe I'll describe the process briefly. Given that everything we think and do and say is a karma, is this process of programming ourselves. And these seeds that we plant in the mind ripen in 4 ways. As a type of rebirth, as a tendency to keep doing it, as an experience of it happening to you, and even as an environmental result. So there's no karma we can't purify. There's no part of our mind we can't change. That's what's so uplifting. Nothing's set in stone. So the first level of practice is, when we've committed, let's say, to being a Buddhist, you live in vows, which puts atomic bombs under the tendencies to kill, lie, steal, badmouth, all the negative habits that will cause us future suffering. And the key thing behind karma is to be sick of your own suffering. It's your own suffering. You want to be sick of your own suffering. So, we've got, there's no karma, every millisecond we're sowing seeds, and there's no seed we can't pull out. There's no seed there's no thought we can't change. There's no action we can't change before it ripens, of course. So the first level is to live in vows, which is really powerful, 24 hours a day. 24 hours a day, we're ticking over virtuous karmic seeds and putting atomic bombs under those habits. And then the next practice to have, which makes it a complete practice of this first level, is to purify. So first one is to stop sowing more weeds in the ground. The second, stop killing, stop stealing, stop lying, stop this, stop that. That stops sowing more weeds. But the other practice is we've got to take care of the weeds that haven't yet ripened, but the seeds are all there. So we've got to put atomic bombs under those seeds to prevent them from ripening. So stop sowing more weeds and put atomic bombs under the seeds so the weeds don't ripen. The next lot. So then we're ahead of the game. Then we can be very content. We're covering all levels of the way karma ripens. We're purifying all aspects of our karma. So we'll die a happy mind. We'll get a good human rebirth. We'll have a tendency to want to keep practicing. We'll have good tendencies not to kill or lie or steal. Our minds will be quite light and buoyant. They won't be heavy. They won't be deluded. They won't be jealous. They won't be angry. Our minds won't be depressed. We'll have optimism. I'm not joking. This is the causes. The first level. Just karma and purifying. Then you get to the second level where you start to work on the mind itself. That's even more subtle, more amazing, when you reconfigure the conceptual stories. So purification, just briefly, is 4 main steps. The 4 R's. It's a psychological process. Like all of Buddhism, it's a psychological process. Don't think of it as religion, It's a psychological process, and I like to think of it this way. It's a process that you do at the end of the day where you learn to be your own friend. We have so many misconceptions about karma. So then what the process is, you regret the things you've done in the past that have sowed seeds in your mind by harming others with your body and speech, the first level, that will ripen as your suffering. And the main energy is because I don't want suffering. Don't think that's mean. This is compassion for yourself. Next level is compassion for others when we get to the compassion wing. So the first one is regret. Second is reliance. I'll go into these. Third is the remedy. The fourth is resolve. I've got a feeling it's in your course notes. I think it's in your course notes. So the first one, regret, is so, so, so important to understand. Even people who've been Buddhists for years, we don't get it. We have all these misconceptions about it. Well, the first misunderstanding is we think it's guilt. We love guilt. So guilt is a function of the ego grasping, the root delusion, and guilt essentially is anger, but you're the object, that's all. If you say a person out there, you did this and you did that and you did this and you're a bad person. So you're seeing something somebody did wrong, and then you say you conclude you're a bad person. So we take those actions and we paint the whole of that person with those bad actions. That's what all delusions exaggerate. It's exactly the same, like, we're talking here. Exactly the same. Guilt is, I did this, and His Holiness was asked one time, what's the difference? Guilt and regret. He said, guilt, you look in the past and you go, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that, and you did. But then you conclude, I'm a bad person. We do this automatically. We concretize it. We paint the whole of ourselves with those few actions. That means we don't see the good parts of our mind. So even with Linda, she sees good things. She has joy, she has people, but this cloud is there, but it's just her mind. So there's other practice we're talking. For Stephen, the pain in his body looms large. So we've got to practice I can put it this way, bringing out the positive roommates. I am kind, I am loving, I am generous, I am practicing. They're positive thoughts. So guilt only sees the bad things, and then it exaggerates, and then you define yourself. I am a bad person. We run to this. Mummy didn't teach you this. Don't blame your Jewish mummy, your Catholic mummy. This is the function of ego grasping. It's concrete and it exaggerates. And this will be despair. And this comes automatically. You don't have to think, oh, I'm a naughty person. You just believe it. It comes immediately. It's so deeply ingrained, But regret, His Holiness says, what is that? Well, the first part's exactly the same. I did do this, and I did kick the dog, and I did shout at my husband, I did kill somebody, I did do this, whatever you did. Actions, you first think of actions you've done with your body and speech that have harmed others. You do, and so you acknowledge you did do it. This is part of the pain that's so hard, because we either blame, I did do it, but it's his fault. Or we have, I did do it and I'm a bad person. Or we go, I did not do it, denial. We blame, guilt, denial. They're the natural responses of ego grasping. So the healthy response, which takes time, is to have the courage to own the fact that I did do it. It's a habit, and it's out of ignorance I did it. You didn't do it if you did do it with a real wish to harm, that's all you admit. But you own the fact that you did it without resisting, without blaming, without guilt, and without denial. It takes time. I did. Now, what's the point of regret? Why do you say, I regret doing it? Well, the thing that it doesn't mean is, therefore, I'm a bad person. The other thing that is so common is we think, I shouldn't have done it. Well, that's another version of anger. Your mother says, you shouldn't have done that. What good is that? It's useless. That's just anger. There's no benefit. There's no action that can come from that. But I did do it. It's just so, this is why the analogy always, the Lamas say, it's like you've eaten poison. So if you've got allergies, you can't eat sugar or something, let's say. It's exactly the same as that. Oh, when you recognize you ate sugar, oh, I can't believe I just didn't realize, my idiot, I can't believe what a fool I am. Quick, I ate sugar. That's regret. Why? And why do I regret it? Because I don't want suffering. That's the logic of regret. What's inbuilt in regret isn't I'm a bad person, isn't I shouldn't have done it, but is, hey, you know what, Robina, for God's sake, you don't want future suffering. Of course I regret having done it, and which leads you automatically to the next thought. Quick, what can I do about it? That's proactive. That's optimism. That's positive. Then you can own everything that's miserable and ridiculous and the dumb seeds you've planted, because you know you can change them. So the second you've eaten sugar, the quicker you acknowledge you've eaten sugar, not, oh, I didn't eat sugar, not, who put sugar in my dinner, not, oh, I'm a bad person. They're all nonsense. They're meaningless. They're useless. There's no action. You just sink into misery. You go, what can I do? Whom can I turn to? Where's the doctor? That's the next step, reliance. So there's two parts to reliance. So, of course, when you do the regret, if you're a little Buddhist, you'd remember the few things you've done, this today, yesterday. You kind of clean up your act at the end of the day. Then in that life, you can remember certain things. I always remember my abortion, which is called killing a human being, basically. This little being, this sentient being at the time of death, one of their virtuous karmic seeds of non-killing, like a miracle was triggered to get born in my womb. Some personal karma there. So I hopped into bed with this. It was always never too much detail. I always talk too much detail, but I'll just tell you the scenario. 1968, I was a hippie living in London. I just arrived in London about a year, I think. And the National Health had just approved abortions. So, of course, I felt lucky, I'd given up being a Catholic when I was 19. I was 23 at the time, going through my process, a raging hippie, trying to be a serious hippie. That means I did what hippies did. I had this boyfriend. I didn't like him much, but never mind. I was a nice boy. I was a nice girlfriend. So I remember the second, I'm telling you too personal here, but this is interesting about conception. Many women tell me this. I knew that second I was pregnant. That second, I thought, no, I'm pregnant. One of my friends, her daughter was staying with her husband while their house was being built. And the daughter came down for breakfast one morning and said, "Oh, Mummy, I'm pregnant." And the mother said, "Oh, good. When did you find out?" And she said, 45 minutes ago. Many women say that. That's when the consciousness goes into the egg and sperm. It's very fascinating. I knew that second. But the first thought that arose in my mind, I could talk about this for the next 10 minutes, as a brilliant example of karma. I was sitting there. I had no thought of a baby. I was just having sex with this boy, I remember the time I was earning 13 pounds a week, and this boy was an architect. I'll never forget. He was Australian, and he was earning £1 an hour. I was very impressed. I remember that. Doesn't matter. I didn't like him much, but it's okay. He was a friendly fellow. But there was a karma ripened, and this particular consciousness who had karma with me, or with the boy, one or the other, ran like a magnet to my fallopian tube. This person caused so they got the human, this is an interesting point. They created the cause from the main karma to get a human body, like a miracle. But they hadn't purified their tendency to kill because they experienced the karma called experience, similar to the cause of their past killing, another karma that caused them to be killed by me while they were in the womb. They didn't even get born. They died young. They didn't even get a chance to get born. That's due to their karma. That's why if you have had an abortion, many women have all this pain, this guilt, this I'm evil, I'm bad, this overwhelming shame. But this is dependent arising. I could know, you see, this is what's so fascinating. The strength of that little being's karma to be killed by me was part of the condition for why the moment I knew I was pregnant, without a doubt in my mind, oh no, I'll have an abortion. That's a dependent arising, That person was in that tennis match with me, and they were hitting the ball back and forth. This is a dependent arising between me and that being. The boy didn't play much role, he just gave me the sperm, There's karma between me and that being. So, my part was, okay, I didn't know. I wasn't a Catholic at the time. I never thought of a soul. I just knew I didn't want this baby. I just knew I didn't want what came out in 9 months. It was very clear for me, uncompromising. I went to the hospital, the Charing Cross Hospital. I remember I felt so lucky because it was free. But what was interesting, the poor baby, this is the karma of the child, this is the karma of the baby now. It was mangled. I had to have another D&C because they mangled the little fetus. It was 12 weeks old. They mangled it. That just must be such suffering for this poor little baby, to be mangled by these forceps, pulling it out, I'm not being horrible. Then I created the cause for this doctor and nurses to create the karma of killing a human being on my behalf. So it's an interesting scenario. The karma of the baby, my karma, the doctor, the nurses, all this scenario together. So when I thought of it then, I just felt lucky. I never thought of it. And when I had to go back to have the second D&C, I got very depressed, and they put me in a room for a week. I felt they were so kind to me. But I didn't know why I was depressed. So it's karma. I always think of that. I regret having done that. Because why? Why? Not because I'm a bad person. You shouldn't have done it. That's not meaningless. Not I'm a bad person. No, I didn't know. It was out of ignorance and due to the karma of this person. So I regret from the depths of my heart, and you think like this, because I don't want the future suffering. I don't want to continue to kill. I don't want to get killed. I don't want to be born in the lower realms, etc. So you regret because you don't want the future result. I regret eating the sugar because I don't want diabetes. I regret the smoking because I don't want cancer. It's healthy. It's self-respectful. It's for your own sake. It's like compassion for yourself. We miss this badly in our culture. We gloss over it and we hear it as punishment and reward and I'm bad. It's completely not like that. It's self-respect. So then if you want to, you can then think, whatever I've done since the beginning of this time that I don't remember, that I've sowed seeds in my mind, they're sitting there waiting to ripen. I don't want them to ripen. I regret every one of them because I don't want future suffering. You've got to add those words, because I don't want future suffering. That's the basis of regret. We're not looking at compassion yet. That comes next. We miss this point, I swear to you. I regret because I don't want the future suffering. It's kindness to yourself. It's self-respect. Then you think, whom can I turn to? Where's the doctor? So for us, it's the Buddha. And as we know, this meditation, you visualize Buddha in the tantric aspect of Bodhisattva. This bodhisattva style above your crown, and it's your lama, your spiritual teacher, your mentor, as the Buddha above your head. You delight. The first part of the second step, reliance, is there's two parts, is refuge in the Buddha. You delight that you've got a doctor whose methods. Buddha doesn't purify you. You purify you. You rely upon the doctor and the medicines that she's going to give you. You do the work. So how delightful to have a decent doctor who can give me methods that I can use to purify my own mind. The second part is now called compassion for those you've harmed. And why they call it reliance is kind of curious. The way they talk is, now we want to get compassion for others. So what do you need? What do you need to get compassion? You need to know suffering sentient beings. So in that sense, you rely upon suffering sentient beings. You need to know about suffering sentient beings because that's the basis of having compassion. So then we think of those we've harmed. I think of that fetus, that sentient being who created the cause to be killed by me, to be mangled in the womb, to have this due to her own past karma. I have such compassion for that person. First I regret for my own sake, then I regret for her sake. Compassion for those you've harmed. The ants, the fish, the ex-boyfriend. I must purify for their sake. Now the other aspect, if you can, if you're brave enough, you can have compassion for those who've harmed you. If you can. Why? Because they're going to suffer in the future. That's the reason for compassion. Then the third step is, the remedy. So there's many remedies. There's a whole medicine cabinet of remedies. A remedy, they often refer to this as the antidote. So obviously any practice, the antidote is obvious. If you've killed, then in your daily life you try to practice not killing. You try to practice helping people. If you've lied, you try to practice speaking the truth. They're antidotes. Every day you must do this anyway, but here in the practice, using the Buddha, it's this visualization, very powerful. The Buddha, you imagine sending nectar, you imagine purifying, you say the Sanskrit mantra. These are said to be really potent practice. All the lamas praise the power of this. And in general, any practice we do that relates to the Buddha, because of the power of enlightened beings, is much more powerful for our mind. That's the remedy. Then the resolve. Pabonka Rinpoche says this is the most important. The decision to change. There's nothing we can't decide to do. So even like someone like Linda, using her as an example of depression, let's say. Inbuilt, ancient, old habits, yeah. You do the purification. Even in the beginning, you can purify actions of body and speech, but you can also purify the delusions. You can also regret the anger, the hopelessness, the delusions, the misery, the actions we did in the past that has caused us to be depressed now, Because it's also actions we've done in the past that cause to have this grey cloud here, like this, just there. You regret whatever actions that have caused that. And you regret because you don't want suffering. Then you have compassion. Then you do the practice and you imagine purifying the body, speech, mind. Then, the fourth step, you make a decision. You live in your vows. I decide I will not kill or not steal, not lie. You keep your vows. You reiterate your vows. It's like doing push-ups. Every time you do a push-up, you get stronger. Every time you say, I won't kill, that habit gets stronger. You're programming your mind with these new habits to not kill, not steal, not lie. And then you can think to yourself, let's say you've got the habit of being depressed. Then I'm going to try and notice my mind as much as I can. As soon as I feel that weight, just do a little kind of counteraction. I've got good qualities as well. Just kind of bring in the positive ones. I'll make an effort to do that. If you have a habit to lie, you're going to catch your mind. I'll do my best not to lie. As Lama says, you don't lie to yourself and say, I'll never get depressed again. That's ridiculous. I'll never lie again if it's a very strong habit. But you catch yourself and you do a little change when you grab your mind, minute by minute. This is the 4 steps. This is purification. As Lama Yeshe says, purification is the power